The private jet touched down on a dusty airstrip, far removed from the opulence of skyscrapers and luxury cars. Michael Sterling, the son of one of the world's wealthiest men, stepped out, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the rural simplicity surrounding him. He was here not by choice, but by his father's ultimatum: spend a month in this remote village or lose access to the family fortune. As Michael surveyed the barren landscape, he couldn't help but ask himself, what could this place possibly teach me? Little did he know, the answer would change his life forever. Michael Sterling had lived a life most people could only dream of. Born into unimaginable wealth, his days were filled with private schools, exotic vacations, and designer everything. His father, William Sterling, was a self-made billionaire who had built an empire from the ground up. Despite his father's humble beginnings, Michael had never known struggle. He spent his time at exclusive parties, posting glamorous photos on social media, and brushing off his father's lectures about hard work and humility. William Sterling had always believed in the value of earning one's place in the world. Frustrated by his son's entitlement, he issued a challenge. Michael would spend 30 days in Rivenpur, a remote village in Southeast Asia, living among its people without any of the luxuries he was accustomed to. If he refused, he would be cut off from the family fortune. Rivenpur was a world away from the bustling cities Michael was used to. It was a tiny village nestled between rolling hills and dense forests. The air smelled of earth and wood smoke, and the sounds of chirping crickets and distant cowbells filled the night. Mud brick houses with thatched roofs lined narrow dirt roads, and the villagers greeted each other with warm smiles despite their modest lives. Upon his arrival, Michael was assigned to live with the Kumar family. Ramesh Kumar, a farmer, and his wife Asha welcomed him with open arms. Their home was simple, a single-room hut with a clay floor, no running water, and only a flickering kerosene lamp for light. Their two children, 9-year-old Priya and 7-year-old Aryan, were shy but curious about their new guest. The stark difference between Michael's life and the Kumars was immediately apparent. That first night, as he lay on a thin mat on the floor, Michael struggled to sleep. The sounds of the forest were foreign to him, and the absence of air conditioning and a soft mattress left him restless. He wondered how he would survive an entire month in this place. The next morning, he awoke to the smell of spiced lentils cooking over an open fire. Asha handed him a plate and smiled warmly. "Breakfast," she said in broken English. Michael hesitated, unused to eating with his hands or sitting cross-legged on the floor. But hunger won out, and he quickly discovered that the food, though simple, was delicious. As the days passed, Michael began to notice the rhythm of life in Rivenpur. Villagers rose with the sun and worked tirelessly in the fields, their laughter and camaraderie filling the air. Despite their hardships, they seemed genuinely happy, a concept Michael struggled to understand. He couldn't help but wonder, how can they find joy in a life with so little? But it wasn't long before Michael's initial skepticism would be challenged in ways he never expected. Rising action. Michael's first challenge in Rivenpur came almost immediately. Ramesh woke him before dawn and handed him a rusted shovel. "Today we plant," Ramesh said in his halting English, gesturing toward the dry, rocky fields on the edge of the village. Michael stared at the barren land in disbelief. He had never worked a day in his life, let alone in the scorching sun. The idea of toiling in the dirt was incomprehensible. "Why don't they just use machines?" Michael mumbled under his breath, dragging his feet as he followed Ramesh and the other villagers. But Ramesh overheard him and replied, "Machines cost money. Here, we have hands and hearts." Michael rolled his eyes, but something about Ramesh's unwavering optimism stuck with him. The day was grueling. The sun beat down mercilessly, and Michael's palms blistered within an hour. By midday, his designer sneakers were caked in mud, and his perfectly coiffed hair was slick with sweat. The villagers worked tirelessly, their laughter and banter a stark contrast to Michael's silent misery. Priya and Aryan ran around barefoot, helping where they could, their giggles echoing through the fields. At one point, Michael dropped his shovel and sat down, panting. Ramesh handed him a cup of water from a clay pot. "Hard work, yes?" he said with a grin. Michael couldn't tell if Ramesh was mocking him or trying to encourage him, but he nodded weakly. "Why do you even bother? This land is so dry, it's hopeless," Michael muttered. Ramesh's expression turned serious. "We plant because we hope. No hope, no life." That evening, Michael collapsed onto his mat, every muscle in his body aching. He stared at the thatched roof, replaying Ramesh's words in his mind. No hope, no life. It was a simple phrase, but it carried a weight Michael couldn't ignore. The next day brought a new challenge. Asha asked Michael to accompany her to the market in the neighboring town to sell vegetables. Reluctantly, he agreed, thinking it might be a chance to escape the monotony of the village. But the trip turned out to be anything but easy. The journey involved walking several kilometers on uneven, dusty roads while carrying heavy baskets of produce. Michael stumbled more than once, drawing amused glances from passing villagers. At the market, Asha greeted everyone with warmth and enthusiasm. She bartered skillfully, exchanging their vegetables for rice, oil, and other essentials. Michael watched in amazement as she managed to stretch every rupee, ensuring her family would have enough to eat for the week. But he also noticed how some people looked down on her, muttering under their breath about her modest clothes and humble demeanor. As they prepared to leave, a well-dressed man approached and offered Asha far less than the vegetables were worth. When she refused, he became aggressive, raising his voice and threatening to take his business elsewhere. Michael felt a surge of anger. "Hey, you can't talk to her like that," he said, stepping between Asha and the man. The man sneered at Michael. "Who are you to interfere?" he spat. Michael faltered, realizing he had no real authority here. But Asha gently pulled him aside and said, "Kindness is stronger than anger." She negotiated calmly, and the man eventually relented, paying a fair price. The incident left Michael shaken. He had always believed that wealth and power were the ultimate tools for solving problems, but Asha's quiet strength and resilience showed him another way. On the walk back to the village, he carried the baskets without complaint, earning a grateful smile from Asha. As the days turned into weeks, Michael began to see Rivenpur through new eyes. He formed bonds with the villagers, especially Priya and Aryan, who adored him despite his initial reluctance to engage. They taught him to climb trees, catch fish, and even dance around the evening fire. For the first time in years, Michael felt a sense of belonging that had nothing to do with money or status. But not everything was smooth. One evening, while playing with the children, Michael overheard a heated conversation between Ramesh and Asha. They were worried about an impending drought and how it would affect the village's already meager resources. "We need help," Asha said, her voice trembling. "But who will listen to us?" Michael's first instinct was to offer money, but he stopped himself. He knew it wasn't the solution they needed. Instead, he decided to use his connections to reach out to an organization his father had supported in the past, a non-profit dedicated to sustainable agriculture in rural areas. It wasn't easy. The organization's representative was skeptical of Michael's intentions, given his reputation as a spoiled rich kid. But Michael persisted, sharing stories of the villagers' resilience and determination. When the organization finally agreed to visit Rivenpur, Michael was elated. But his joy was short-lived. A rumor spread through the village that Michael was planning to sell their land to outsiders. The villagers, who had come to trust him, now viewed him with suspicion. Even Ramesh seemed distant, his warm smiles replaced by wary glances. The betrayal stung. Michael tried to explain, but the language barrier and their distrust made it difficult. He felt isolated, questioning whether his efforts had been worth it. One evening, Priya approached him with tears in her eyes. "Why are you leaving us?" she asked. Her words broke his heart. Determined to prove his intentions, Michael arranged a meeting with the entire village. Standing in the center of the square, he addressed them as best he could, with Asha translating his words. "I came here thinking I had nothing to learn from you," he admitted. "But you've shown me what true strength and kindness look like. I don't want to take anything from you. I want to help you protect what's yours." To demonstrate his commitment, Michael shared his plan for sustainable farming techniques that would make the village less dependent on rain. He also promised to bring clean water to the village by funding the construction of a well. Slowly, the villagers began to soften, their suspicion giving way to cautious optimism. The turning point came when the non-profit representatives arrived. They conducted workshops on soil conservation, irrigation, and crop diversification, involving the villagers in every step. Michael worked alongside them, earning back the trust he had nearly lost. Through these experiences, Michael began to shed his old self. He no longer cared about his image or his inheritance. He found joy in the simple things, sharing meals with the Kumars, watching the sunrise over the hills, and listening to the villagers' stories. The connections he formed in Rivanpur were deeper and more meaningful than anything he had experienced in his life of luxury. But the greatest challenge was yet to come. Just as the village began to thrive, a powerful storm threatened to destroy everything they had worked for. Fields were flooded, homes were damaged, and the new crops were at risk of being lost. The villagers were devastated, and Michael felt the weight of their despair. Instead of giving in to hopelessness, Michael rallied the community. "We've come this far together," he said. "We can rebuild, stronger than before." His determination was infectious. The villagers worked tirelessly to repair the damage, and Michael used his resources to provide emergency supplies and assistance. As the storm clouds cleared, a rainbow arched over Rivanpur, symbolizing hope and renewal. The village was forever changed, not just by the resources Michael had brought, but by the bonds they had forged and the lessons they had learned from one another. What Michael found in Rivanpur was more valuable than any inheritance: a sense of purpose, a deeper understanding of humanity, and the realization that true wealth lies in the connections we build and the lives we touch. Climax. The sun hung low in the sky as Michael stood at the center of the village square, his heart pounding in his chest. The air was heavy with tension, a stark contrast to the joyous laughter he had grown accustomed to hearing in Rivanpur. This was the day everything would come to a head, the day he would either prove himself or lose the trust of the villagers forever. The non-profit team had returned with a detailed plan for irrigation systems and sustainable farming practices, but rumors still lingered. Some villagers whispered that Michael was working with outsiders to take their land. Others doubted his intentions entirely, convinced he was just another privileged man seeking to use their struggles for his own benefit. Even Ramesh, who had become like a mentor to Michael, kept his distance, his warm smile replaced with a cautious frown. Michael cleared his throat, his voice breaking through the murmurs. "Please, everyone, listen to me," he began, his tone firm but pleading. "I know you don't trust me right now, and I can't blame you, but I'm not here to take anything from you. I'm here to help." Asha stepped forward, translating his words for the crowd. Her voice carried an edge of desperation, as though she too feared the villagers wouldn't listen. "He's telling the truth," she added. "He's brought people who can teach us how to grow more food, even with less rain, but they won't stay if we don't work together." The crowd remained silent, their faces unreadable. Michael's stomach churned as he scanned the sea of eyes, searching for a sign of hope. Just as he was about to continue, an older man named Ravi stepped forward. Ravi was one of the village elders, his word carrying significant weight. "Why should we trust you?" he asked, his voice steady but challenging. "Outsiders have come before, promising to help, and left us worse off than before." Michael met Ravi's gaze, his expression earnest. "Because I've seen what you're capable of," he replied. "You've taught me more in these few weeks than I've learned in my entire life. You've shown me resilience, kindness, and what it means to fight for what you love. I don't want to take that away. I want to help you protect it." His words hung in the air, but Ravi's skeptical gaze didn't waver. Michael realized he needed to do more than talk. He needed to show them he was serious. Turning to the non-profit representatives, he gestured toward the blueprints they had brought for the irrigation system. "Let's start today," he said. "Right now, I'll work alongside you and we'll show the village what's possible." The next morning, the work began. Michael, the non-profit team, and a few brave villagers set out to dig trenches for the irrigation system. The labor was backbreaking, and the sun blazed mercilessly overhead. But Michael refused to stop. Every blister on his hands, every bead of sweat dripping down his face, felt like a step closer to proving himself. At first, the majority of the villagers watched from a distance, their expressions a mix of curiosity and doubt. But as the day wore on, something remarkable began to happen. One by one, they joined in. First Priya and Aryan, carrying water to the workers, then Asha, who grabbed a shovel and began digging alongside Michael. Eventually, even Ramesh picked up a pickaxe, his guarded demeanor softening as he worked beside the man he had once mistrusted. By the end of the day, the first trench was complete. Water flowed through it for the first time, a small but powerful symbol of what could be achieved when they worked together. The villagers cheered, their earlier doubts replaced with cautious optimism, but the celebration was short-lived. The following week brought an unexpected betrayal. Late one night, as Michael was reviewing plans for the next phase of the project, he overheard hushed voices outside the community hall. Stepping into the shadows, he discovered two men from the non-profit team speaking with a local land broker. Michael's heart sank as he caught snippets of their conversation. Talk of selling the newly irrigated land to developers for a hefty profit. Fury surged through him as he confronted the men. "Is this why you agreed to help?" he demanded, his voice low but filled with rage. "To exploit these people and take what little they have." The men tried to deny it, but their guilt was written all over their faces. "It's just business, Michael," one of them said, shrugging. "They'll get compensated." Michael clenched his fists, his mind racing. He couldn't let this happen, but he also knew that exposing the betrayal would shatter the fragile trust he had worked so hard to rebuild. He needed to act swiftly and decisively. The next morning, Michael called a meeting with the villagers, the non-profit team, and the land broker. Standing before them, he revealed everything he had overheard, his voice trembling with anger and determination. "I came here to help, not to let others exploit you," he said. "These men have betrayed your trust, and I won't stand by and let it happen." The villagers erupted in outrage, their earlier doubts about Michael giving way to a newfound respect for his courage. Ramesh stepped forward, his voice booming over the crowd. "This land belongs to us," he declared, "and we won't let anyone take it." Together, they forced the non-profit representatives and the land broker to leave, making it clear that Revanpur would not be exploited. Michael felt a surge of relief as the villagers rallied around him, their support a testament to how far they had come. But the betrayal wasn't the end of their challenges. A few days later, a powerful storm swept through Revanpur, threatening to undo all their progress. The irrigation system flooded, crops were damaged, and homes were destroyed. The villagers were devastated, their hope hanging by a thread. Michael knew this was the true test, not just of his character, but of the community they had built together. Refusing to give in to despair, he rallied the villagers once again. "We've overcome so much already," he said. "We can rebuild, stronger and better than before, but we have to do it together." Under his leadership, the villagers worked tirelessly to repair the damage. They reinforced the irrigation system, replanted crops, and rebuilt their homes with the same determination that had carried them through their earlier struggles. And through it all, Michael was right there with them, digging trenches, hammering nails, and offering words of encouragement. As the storm clouds cleared, the village began to transform. The new irrigation system allowed them to grow more food than ever before, and the bonds they had forged through their shared hardships created a sense of unity that couldn't be broken. Michael looked around at the smiling faces of his newfound family, his heart swelling with pride and gratitude. What had started as a journey to escape his privileged but unfulfilling life had become something far greater. Michael had found a purpose, a community, and a deeper understanding of what it meant to truly live. And in the process, he had helped Rivenpur find hope and strength in the face of adversity. The story of Rivenpur's transformation spread far and wide, inspiring other villages to take similar steps towards sustainability and self-reliance. And though Michael eventually returned to the city, he left a piece of his heart in Rivenpur, visiting often to see the friends and family who had changed his life forever. Resolution. As the first rays of sunlight filtered through the lush trees of Rivenpur, a new day dawned, not just for the village, but for everyone touched by its story. The aftermath of the storm and the betrayal had left visible scars, but it also sowed seeds of resilience and hope that would grow stronger over time. Months had passed since Michael's arrival in Rivenpur, and the village was now unrecognizable from the struggling community it once was. The irrigation system had not only been repaired, but expanded, providing water to every field in the area. With consistent water supply, the villagers had been able to diversify their crops, planting vegetables, grains, and even small orchards that began to flourish under the careful care of the community. The once barren village square now buzzed with activity. Children played near a newly built water fountain, a symbol of their collective success. Farmers displayed fresh produce in a vibrant weekly market, drawing traders from neighboring villages who marveled at the abundance. The sense of scarcity and survival had been replaced by one of prosperity and possibility. Michael stood at the edge of the square, watching the hustle and bustle with a quiet smile. He had become more than an outsider in Rivenpur. He was now part of their family. The villagers affectionately referred to him as Bhaiya, a term of endearment that spoke of the bond they shared. Michael's personal transformation was no less remarkable than that of the village. He had left the city as a man burdened by privilege and emptiness, searching for meaning in a world that felt devoid of it. But in Rivenpur, he had found not just purpose, but also a sense of belonging. The simple yet profound act of contributing to something greater than himself had filled the void he didn't even realize he carried. The experience had also forced him to confront his own biases and assumptions. There was a time when Michael might have seen a village like Rivenpur as a place to be pitied or saved. Now he recognized it as a community brimming with wisdom, strength, and untapped potential. It wasn't Rivenpur that had needed saving, it was him. Michael's relationship with his father, the billionaire who had sent him on this journey, had also shifted dramatically. For years, their conversations had been cold and transactional, centered around obligations and expectations. But when Michael returned to the city for a brief visit, he brought stories of the people he had met, the lessons he had learned, and the changes he had helped create. To his surprise, his father listened intently, his usually stern expression softening as Michael spoke. By the end of their conversation, his father admitted, "I sent you there because I thought you needed to grow up. I didn't realize how much I needed to change too." The two men shared a rare moment of understanding, bridging a gap that had felt insurmountable for years. One of the most remarkable outcomes of Michael's time in Rivenpur was the unity it fostered among the villagers. The trials they had faced together, the storm, the betrayal, and the hard work of rebuilding, had forged bonds that transcended old divisions. Farmers who once quarreled over scarce resources now shared tools and knowledge freely. Women, who had previously been excluded from decision-making, played leading roles in managing the market and overseeing community projects. Ramesh, the elder who had initially doubted Michael, became one of his staunchest supporters. "This village isn't just surviving anymore," Ramesh said during a community gathering. "We're thriving, and it's because we learned to trust each other and to trust that we're capable of more than we thought." Asha, the young woman who had been Michael's first ally, had also come into her own. Inspired by the changes in the village, she started a literacy program for women and children, teaching them not just to read and write, but also to dream. "Education is power," she told Michael one evening. "If we can teach our children to think for themselves, they'll build a future even brighter than ours." The story of Rivenpur's transformation didn't stay within the village. Word spread to neighboring communities, and soon people from other villages came to see what Rivenpur had achieved. Some came seeking advice on how to implement similar projects, while others simply wanted to witness the remarkable turnaround for themselves. Michael took on the role of an informal ambassador, sharing what he had learned while emphasizing that the real credit belonged to the villagers themselves. "I didn't do this," he told a group of visitors one afternoon. "They did. All I did was remind them of the strength they already had." The ripple effect extended even further. NGOs and government officials took notice of Rivenpur, using it as a model for rural development. Grants and resources began to flow into the region, enabling more villages to build irrigation systems, schools, and markets. What had started as a small effort to help one community had sparked a movement that was changing lives across the region. As Michael reflected on everything that had happened, he couldn't help but marvel at the interconnectedness of it all. His journey had started with a single decision: to step out of his comfort zone and into a world he didn't understand. That decision had set off a chain reaction, touching not just his life, but the lives of countless others. It was a humbling realization. For all his initial doubts and mistakes, Michael had learned that true change doesn't come from grand gestures or wealth alone. It comes from empathy, collaboration, and a willingness to listen. The people of Rivenpur had taught him that the most powerful transformations often start in the unlikeliest of places, with ordinary people doing extraordinary things. On the anniversary of the day he arrived in Rivenpur, Michael stood in the village square once again. The villagers had gathered for a celebration, their faces glowing with pride and joy. Asha presented him with a handmade plaque that read, "To our brother Michael, a part of Rivenpur forever." Tears welled up in Michael's eyes as he accepted the plaque, overwhelmed by the love and gratitude surrounding him. "I should be thanking you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've given me more than I could ever give you." As the sun set over the village, casting a warm, golden light over the fields and homes, Michael felt a profound sense of peace. He had come to Rivenpur searching for meaning, and he had found it, not in wealth or status, but in connection, community, and the shared pursuit of a better future. The villagers cheered as fireworks lit up the night sky, their laughter and applause echoing through the fields. Michael stood among them, no longer an outsider, but one of their own. It was a moment of pure joy and triumph, a testament to the power of resilience, unity, and the human spirit. As the celebration continued, Michael knew that this was just the beginning. The seeds they had planted, both literal and metaphorical, would continue to grow, spreading hope and change far beyond the borders of Rivanpur. And though his journey had started as an escape, it had become a homecoming in the truest sense of the word. The story of Rivanpur wasn't just a tale of survival. It was a story of transformation, proving that even the smallest actions can create ripples of change that touch the world. And as Michael looked out over the smiling faces of his new family, he felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought him here.